for the Shop Report with
Barbershop Jay.
What up, sports fans? Welcome to the Shop Report. I'm Barbershop Jay. D. Gully is off today. Here's what's happening. The Q's costly renovation. That's right, Quicken Loans Arena, $140 million. Why now, I ask, and not before the Cavs won a championship? Is it time to rename college football's awards? We say yes, and we'll tell you why. The Cleveland Browns, now that their miserable 1 in 1,700 season is over. The 6-step resurgence. There's nowhere else for them to go. After hitting rock bottom, nowhere else for them to go but up. And last but not least, the AFC NFC Wild-Cards that start this weekend. Yes, the NFL, as broken as the Shield might be, the NFL is still must-see TV. But again, we're going to start things off with the Q, the Quicken Loans Arena's costly renovation. Now, the city of Cleveland has what I like to call an in-your-face kind of gall, using taxpayer money to renovate the Q. Now, this is not the first time that the city of Cleveland has used taxpayer money to renovate one of the sports teams, the big three, if you would, their stadium, or make some improvements to one of the buildings that our sports teams reside in or that reside in this city. But the in-your-face kind of gall using the taxpayer money to renovate the Q after the Cavs all of a sudden win a championship, that's odd. Where was this sudden need for renovation before the Cavs won a chip? Because there was no mention of a renovation prior to. And at the same time, they can turn around and deny with no hesitation the very same taxpayers from whence they take to renovate these stadiums or to build, they take an increase in minimum wage. I find this disgusting and acceptable for this city and any other city. You all know my feeling on this. It's no way in the world where you got a city that's got a major sports franchise and you're asking the people who live in that city, and I guarantee you, especially here in Cleveland, 2/3 of the people that are in this city that you're asking for monies from are your minimum wage, blue collar, if there is still such a thing, workers who are basically footing the bill for you to build or renovate these establishments. I don't have a problem with it until you tell those same people, no, we're not going to give you more money, but we're going to take more money so that we can build or renovate. Well, I say, let Dan Gilbert pay for it. Haven't the people in this town invested enough in these franchises? They don't even acknowledge the Monsters win as they did initially for winning the championship or winning it all, as they do the Cavs in the hope for the Browns. This city was actually getting ready to celebrate a possible or potentially 0-16 season for the Browns. We'll get to that more in a bit. But it just disgusts me. Let me read to you an article, because I'm not the only one who feels this way. Brent Larkin writes for Cleveland.com, Cleveland's online newspaper, if you would. And I'm going to read to you in its entirety this article. And we're going to, of course, break it down afterwards. For owners of the Browns, Cavaliers, and Indians, Cuyahoga County taxpayers are the gift that keeps on giving. The latest to belly up to the trough are the Cavaliers, with public and private sector leaders rallying behind the idea of paying half the cost of a $140 million Dan Gilbert plan to make significant improvements to Quicken Loans Arena, a building the taxpayers own in name only. I repeat, in name only. Contrary to most public investments in privately run sports facilities, the details in this deal actually protect the taxpayers against cost overruns. Well, imagine that. Thank you for being so kind. Those protections didn't exist in the Gateway Agreement. We all remember when the Gateway was built back in the mid-'90s during the Indians' heyday in the 94, 95, those years. In the Gateway Agreement that built the arena and baseball stadium, in the early 1990s, and the football stadium for the Browns later that decade. For that, taxpayers eventually paid dearly, as overruns at the football stadium and arena proved expensive. Nevertheless, the pattern here is obvious. This community will pay any price to retain its big league status, even if it means putting more important needs on the back burner. So I challenge all you cats out there. I love my city and all of this. After hearing that last sentence right there, explain to me how you grown and you trying to separate this from that, from the blight, the sports teams that win or the sports teams when they win in, separate that from the blight you see in this city that you walk past every day. How you separate that? Greater Cleveland is the smallest market in the nation that is home to the big three of professional sports teams: baseball, basketball, and football. Now, I'll discuss on another show again at a later time about my thoughts on this whole small market thing. Because small market geographically, but fiscally, Cleveland spends money. Just look at downtown and what Dan Gilbert done did. And you talk about $140 million to renovate? Come on, man. I don't want to hear about that small market mentality maybe. It's an aging, relatively uneducated, no-growth region, Cleveland that is. But when it comes to building, renovating, and repairing our sports palaces, we can spend with the best of them, see? So that small market, I ain't buying that. That don't jive with me. He goes on to say, a community is the sum of the choices it makes, and the ones outside forces make for it. Good choices like private and public investments in neighborhoods like downtown, Ohio City, Detroit Shoreway, and Tremont have offset breathtaking declines in other parts of the city. How can in 4 areas the improvements made offset all the rest of the areas in Cleveland that are beset with blight? Other choices or exercises in benign neglect have had a staggering impact. Hello? Like the failure to address a segregated school system. Imagine that. Leading to a federal court order in the late 1970s that contributed mightily to the city losing 400,000 residents in 40 years. For all you analytic folk out there, just imagine that. In the benign neglect category was the late arriving realization that an educated workforce is essential in a 21st century economy, especially to a region ravaged by industrial decay. But ongoing funding of sports facilities is the most emotional of all our choices. So we are living in a city with the industrial decay. The industrial, it's no longer an industrial city. We've become service oriented. Decay. I don't know about y'all, but I mean, last time I checked, the word decay that don't sound good in no sentence. That's not a good thing. Like to decay, that's not a good thing. And yet we still find the money to support the Browns, the Indians, and Cavs. But we ain't got none. But folk leaving here, as far as the city itself, the entire city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, we ain't got no money for schools and, things of that nature. But the Browns, the Indians, and Cavs and prisons, oh, yeah, we got plenty enough money for that. But I digress. The last and only time county voters rejected a stadium tax was in 1984. When a $150 million bond issued to build a dome stadium on the Central Market site lost by a 2-1 margin. Now, that to me was asinine in and of itself. Why not put a dome on Cleveland Browns Stadium? You got this big thing sitting right there on the lake. You could get more and more use out of it. You could have NCAA tournaments. Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is look at Jerry's World, and you'll see. It's not so much that because it's big, but because it's got a dome on it. You can have championship fights. I mean, we talk about the revenue in this city and the monies that could be had in this city and for everybody in the city. I'm talking about the entire city could look like downtown. If you were to put a dome on the Cleveland Browns Stadium, opening the venue up all year round instead of just football season, and then watching the Browns go 1-15. We're going to talk about that too in a minute, of course. But I'm just saying, you could get more use out of it. You can get more money that could go then into the city or to the city's coffers, if you would. Since then, voters have been far more generous, approving stadium-related taxes in 1990, 95, and last year's election to extend the sin tax. Not to mention the numerous times tax money has been directed to the facilities without a vote. I repeat, not to mention the numerous times tax money has been directed to the facilities without a vote. What the hockey sticks is going on in this town that you folks can't see or are blinded by the fact that this team win and that team didn't win and so on and so forth? Man, y'all see what they doing behind the scenes? They making moves with your money and they ain't even asking you for permission. Of the three teams, the Indians have been the least demanding. And if you ever go to an Indians game, it's the most family-oriented of the three, too, if you ask me. The Dolan family, which owns the team, the Indians, is by no means poor. Ain't none of them poor. Haslam, Gilbert, Dolan, ain't none of them poor. No. Not by sports franchises, as we like to say, standards. Again, the Dolans are by no means poor, but they have the shallowest pockets of the three ownership groups. They're the only owners from Cleveland. Imagine that. And last year, they financed an impressive $25 million touch-up. Not 140, not 100, not 150. $25 million touch-up to Progressive Field without begging for more public money. Hello, you play to win the game. And stop robbing the public over and over again. But y'all got love for this city just the same. Home ain't, it ain't where you're from, it's where you at. And where this city is right now, when it comes to the monies and this, how they spend tax money, where they at right now, it's not a good place. I'm disgusted. Of course, the worst organization playing in the worst stadium is the Browns. Let me say that again. Of course, the worst organization, not the one on the come up and on the rise and, on the clives, and I got hives. Chives. The worst organization playing in the worst stadium is the Browns. In the last 2 decades, the taxpayers have spent nearly $1 billion. Yeah, I'm going to say that again. $1 billion. That includes stadium debt service on this pathetic sports team so many inexplicably love. I've been asking y'all that. I'm a diehard Browns fan. What they giving you? What have they given you to die for? Yeah, y'all dead, all right. 3 years ago, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam picked the pockets of the poor people who reside in Cleveland to the tune of $30 million to help pay for a new scoreboard. Now Dan Gilbert turned around after the Cavs won the championship and asked the taxpayers for $140 million. And the scoreboard generates revenue for the Browns, not for the city and the taxpayers that they've asked money from to build these to build the scoreboard or the renovations. Yeah, it generates money, but they ain't giving it back to you. And y'all say no to a $12 minimum wage increase for them taxpayers. Man, that's some bull. Unlike Gateway, which without question helped save downtown, we're not talking about Northeast Ohio, we're talking about downtown. Building the new Brown Stadium on the lakefront has, in hindsight, proven to be a poor choice driven by the emotion of the moment following the original team's flight to Baltimore. That's a big problem in this city. Emotion. And the folks who run this town, they feed off your emotion. Your blind emotion. That's right. And it's because the Indians and Cavaliers matter so much more to the downtown economy that the Browns, to the downtown economy than the Browns, that renovating the arena now in exchange for the Cavaliers agreeing to an ironclad lease extension makes a measure of sense. A measure. But demanding Gilbert pay the entire $140 million makes even more sense. See, not a measure as in a piece or portion, but asking Dan Gilbert to pay for it makes even more sense, meaning it makes all of the sense in the world. With a net worth, Dan Gilbert's now, reportedly approaching $5 billion at the time of this broadcast, $70 million is a little more than a rounding error to the Detroit area resident. As the negotiator-in-chief on this latest deal, County Executive Armand Budish should reach out to Gilbert and take him on a tour down memory lane. Look, you've been a responsible owner, but 7 years ago, in the throes of a crippling recession, you made promises to this community that weren't kept. In return for voters giving you a monopoly on a full-service casino downtown, you promised to build a palatial $600 million casino overlooking the river. And with your partners, you exaggerated by tens of millions the tax revenue the casino deal would generate for local governments and, most important of all, school systems. Well, guess what, Dan Gilbert, and all the rest of you owners out there? Like Britton Larkin, I say, and I ask, or I say again without asking, pay for the entire renovation yourself, and we'll call it even. Up next, is it time to rename the College Football Awards? We at the Shop Report think so, and we say so. While we won't bore you with the entire list of awards, we picked out a few of the most notables. And we asked ourselves, why is John Mackey and more recently Ronnie Lott, and both deservedly so, the only two black players to have one of college football's most prestigious awards named after him or them? Now, here's some of the possible renames we thought were interesting. I'm going to first read to you the awards themselves. If I could just find my paper here. Oh, here we go. Old age, boy, something else. Now, again, I'm not going to go through the entire list of awards, but I'm just going to name off a few of the most notables, the one we can all recognize. The Chuck Bednarik Award goes to the best defensive player. The Biletnikoff Award, best wide receiver. The Buckets Award, linebacker. The Walter Camp Award, the Heisman Trophy, and the Maxwell Award, we will discuss at a later date on another show. But just to throw this out here right quick, they all, and let me just go back and say which award is what. The Walter Camp Award goes for Player of the Year. The Heisman Trophy goes to Outstanding Player. And the Maxwell Award goes to Best Player. To me, they're one and the same. But again, that's for another show at another time. We all know the Lou Groza, that's the place kicker. That's not really. The Lombardi Award, the best lineman or linebacker. And, of course, one of the two African-Americans we said an award was named after, John Mackey for the best tight end and Ronnie Lott for best defensive impact player. I think they just recently added that in 2004. The Bronco Nagurski Awards for the best defensive player. The Davey O'Brien Awards for the best quarterback. The Outland Trophies for the best lineman. The Jim Thorpe Award is best defensive back, and the Doak Walker Award best running back. So let us go through some of the players that we came up with. How about, and let's go here first, for the Bednarik Award, again, the best defensive lineman, how about Mean Joe Green? Now, we're not going to really go into detail, on this topic right now because I want to bring my partner and a few other people in on this. We're going to have some sort of round table to discuss this really in detail. But I just want to put this out here just to give you all something to think about. Mean Joe Green for the Bednarik Award, Best Defensive Player. Jerry Rice for the Bolitnikoff Award. How about for the Butkus Award, best linebacker per se, or so to speak? Why not Lawrence Taylor? And then the Lombardi Award. And I mean, ain't the Super Bowl trophy enough? I mean, it should be more than enough. How many? And I'm no offense, I like Lombardi all day long, but he got too many awards with his name on it already. I don't know if this one should be. It should be that's why again, this should maybe be renamed. But the best lineman or linebacker, how about Buck Buchanan? Play for the Kansas City Chiefs. On that 1970 Super Bowl winning team, I might add. Now, when they say a Lombardi Award, I'm thinking best defensive lineman or yeah, of course, right, or linebacker. What about Ray Lewis? The Nagurski Award, best defensive player. I'm thinking defensive lineman here, but it says best defensive player. Why not Charles Woodson? Or Reggie White? We all know who Reggie White was, right? We should. The Davey O'Brien Award. I'm going to just give you one name here. What about Warren Moon? Yeah. Warren Moon. Or the Outland Trophy. What about Anthony Munoz for the Outland Trophy as best offensive lineman? What about Jonathan Ogden? And I throw Munoz in there because he is a person of color. We can talk about that later, too, if y'all want to. At another time, another day. But the Outland Trophy, best offensive lineman. Orlando Pace, maybe. The Thorpe Award, best defensive back. Again, Charles Woodson. And I don't know if you would throw safeties into this, but I would. What about Ed Reed? Doak Walker Award. Why is this award not named after Jim Brown? If not a Barry Sanders or a Emmitt Smith, or I won't say a Franco Harris, but I mean, I don't know. Some of y'all out there might be able to make a case for a Franco Harris. But if nothing else, Jim Brown, Bo Jackson, Eric Dickerson. Oh, and right quick, going back to the O'Brien Award for the quarterbacks, I forgot to mention one. What about Doug Williams? And then last but not least on this subject, there's one award that was discontinued, and I'm curious as to know why it was discontinued. I'd have to do some more research on that and get back to y'all. But the George Munger Award was given for the best head coach, and that's, again, discontinued. Why? I have no idea. But I say bring back the award with Tony Dungy's name on it. Now, how about that? Now, to me, again, a few of these awards are redundant in terms of what they're given for. But those are just a few of the names that we came up with for you all, to give you all something to think about, let's say. I say, or we say, it's high time that they rename some of these awards. And not to pick on it, but the Biletnikoff, because, you hear that a lot. You know what I'm saying? Seeing how a wide receiver in football is one of those sexy positions, if you would. So you hear the Biletnikoff thing. But I'm just curious, and no knock against Biletnikoff, because he was a bad boy. Ain't no question. Fred Biletnikoff was a bad boy for them Raiders. But for all you people out there who love stats and the analytics, if you can't explain to me any other award, explain to me why that award has not been renamed after arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL or NFL history, and that is Jerry Rice. That is Jerry Rice. But I egress. Okay, shifting gears here. We're going to talk about the most favorited topic that you all want to discuss. And that is the Cleveland Browns, 6-step resurgence. Like I said earlier, there's nowhere to go. After you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up after hitting that bottom. So we're going to get right into the Browns' 6-step resurgence. And I'm going to keep saying that because apparently the folks at the Browns front office, they can't get it right. So my partner and I and the shop contributors, we decided we'd put our heads together and see if we couldn't come up with something that maybe we could submit to Haslam. And I'll mention his comments. Jimmy Haslam, Browns owner, said, and I like what he said, but something we can't submit to the Browns front office, and maybe that they might put some of the stuff we submitted into play, or when they're considering, what they're considering or should be considering. First up, they need to get a quarterback is the position. We all know that. It's a quarterback-driven league, and we've heard it ad nauseum. You can't win without it, and you got to have a quarterback. We get it. So get a Gary Danielson / Bernie Kosar combination. That veteran who's had above average success, and then a rookie with all of the tools. Now, Bernie Kosar came to Cleveland, to the Browns, from the University of Miami in 1985. And Gary Danielson, who had been around the league for a while, was his mentor, so to speak. But Gary Danielson, well, he was, albeit a backup he may have started for a few teams, I'm not sure. But he was beyond solid. He wasn't just no game manager. Gary Danielson, it was times where, you felt like, he could win you a game or two. But his football mind was greater than his ability, so to speak. And he really mentored Bernie into being what most folk in Cleveland who got a chance to see the Browns in the mid-'80s all came to know and love. The Bernie Kosar and it wasn't the Cardiac Kids. That was Brian Sipe. But that was the last time the Browns had a quarterback worthy of mention. Let me put it like that. And Gary Danielson had a lot to do with it. And then you find a rookie, like I said, with all of the tools. And number 2, no more trading down. Stand pat, pick where you're at. Because for whatever reason, the Browns front office, and it don't matter which front office it has been, they cannot seem to get this draft thing right for whatever reason. Every other team can go from worst to first in terms of their draft or in the grades on the draft and so. But the Browns draft grades have been horrendous since 1999. Now, is it me or am I just crazy? What's going on? Y'all tell me. Draft a quarterback who's played in a pro-style system. Now, I don't know who that quarterback may be. And here recently, or after the thrashing of Ohio State, looks like Deshaun Watson might be then move to the front of the line, if you would. Now, I'm not sure. I believe the Browns are picking first or second in this upcoming draft, next to the Jaguars. I don't have that in front of me, who's first, who's second. But no more of this trading down. And as I've mentioned before, when it comes to drafting players, a former colleague on this show, he and I used to go back and forth about every year, who should the Browns take? Who should the Browns get? Excuse me. And I would say, I would divulge him. I would break it down, man. I think they need to get such and such from such and such state or such and such, such and such. I said, you know what, man? They're so inept at this process that I had to completely disband or do away with the breakdown on who should and who they shouldn't get. And here's what I think that they should have in mind, this formula to drafting, or it should be included somewhere in the formula to drafting. You look at the top 100 players coming out of college, and then you look at where the Browns draft at. And then somewhere in your draft picks, all of them actually need to come off that top 100 list. I don't care what the guy's name is. I don't care what position he play. Get the best out of the best 100 available. So in other words, if you're the Browns and you're picking at 2, and the third guy of the top 100 is there, that's who you get at number 2, if you all get my drift. Or let's just say the Browns was picking at 5. And the 4 teams picking before them took the first 2 players on the top 100 list. Then your next player at 5, if he's there, the third best player on that top 100 got to go to you at 5. You get what I'm saying? And then so on and so forth down the list as you go through your picks. All this trading down for multiple picks, we're going to trade down 7 spots to get 38 picks in the first round in 2029 and 1,700 picks in 3037. Forget all of that, man, because it's not working. You all doing all this trading down in steel. Now, they made a couple picks with the Ryan Nassib and the Agba. Some of these guys look promising. But for as inept and as bad as this franchise has been since 1999, looking promising and hope on the horizon, man, that time is coming past. Get it done and get it done now. Draft a quarterback who's played in a pro-style system. The O-line must be rebuilt inside out. Must be. I'm not saying you got to make major changes. I'm not saying who you go and get. I don't know if it's free agent. I don't know if it's through the draft. I don't know what. I don't know how you do that, but it's got to be redone. And the way things looking now for the Atlanta Falcons, it's just real hair scratching that you let a guy like Alex Mack go. And then on the flip side, you got a guy like Taylor Gabriel, who's had a large part or played a significant enough role in the Falcons being where they at right now. Because Matt Ryan, he's going to probably win the MVP. He done spread the ball around to 17,000 different receivers. But yet and still, these guys are not good enough to play for the Browns. And Joe Thomas said as much. I'm talking about Alex Mack. I'm telling y'all about Taylor Gabriel. We need the type of college quarterback after the O-line has been revamped inside out, when the O-line creates a pocket, the guy who can play from the pocket. Get me an offensive coordinator whose football philosophies mandate that an opposing defense defend the entire field. Like I used to tell my former colleague, I'm not talking about who they should and who should get more. Get the kind of guys who on game day, or the other offensive coordinator, when he drawing up, how they draw the plays up on the board or whatever the case may be, when he drawing that stuff up, for everybody else, he using X's and O's. But for this one guy, he got to deal with for y'all, or 2 guys, he's drawing their number. Look, man, we need to, like teams used to do for Lawrence Taylor. They put 56 on the board. Hey, look, man, your job, and whether or not if you keep your job, depending on whether or not if you can block this guy. That's them the kind of players the Browns need. Mandate that opposing defenses defend the entire field. Incorporate screens. Incorporate more screens in the passing game, especially with the running backs. I don't like that bubble screen where the quarterback drops back, turn, and throws to the right or to the left to the wide receivers out there. That's okay for college. But in football, man, go north and south, man. And if you do got to go east and west, like if you're a running back, for instance, and you've been handed the ball, man, listen here. It should only be for 1.11 thousandths of a second. Then you're going north and south. Go ahead. All of this dancing left, east and west, we ain't got time for all of that, man. Go get them W's. An offensive coordinator whose philosophies make it so that the defenses have to defend the entire field. That is so underrated in this when it comes to the Browns. I mean, seems like it's almost dismissed. And when you're using the running backs, because the Browns don't screen enough to me, using the running back where you got offensive linemen pulling out in front of them, so to speak. That is such a critical weapon offensively in NFL football. Because defensive teams that like to rush up the field and they got, putting loud pressure, that will kill pressure right off the rip. I bet you won't come running up the field no more, Dwight Freeney. So when you get the running backs and using them in the passing game, the ones who don't already have hands, then you got to have a coaching staff to put together to teach them how to catch. Then number 6, you need a defensive coordinator who gives the opposing team's offensive coordinators nightmares about not only who to block, but at the same time are sound in their tackling principles, plays downhill, has all pro anticipatory skills when reading coverages on the fly. And they also, too, can defend the entire field. Read and react. I tell people all the time, when these players are watching film, this is how you're able to take from the films you're supposed to be able to take from the film room to the field. It's not just that you're looking at the film. What are you looking for? See, if you know what you're looking for, like a guy, for instance, Jim Brown, if you read his autobiography, he says something so poignant about understanding assignments. He said, and not only did I understand mines, but I knew what the left tackle all the way through the right tackle was supposed to do, and all the guys in between, and the receivers, and the fullback, and the court. He said, I knew what everybody's job was. Matter of fact, we saw it on display here earlier this season with Ezekiel Elliott. Why is he having the success that he's having? It's not that he's just a dynamic runner, but against the Steelers on the game-winning touchdown. He was asked afterwards, man, how did you know to hit that gap? He said, man, I saw the guy pre-snap. I saw the linebacker jump from the A gap to the B gap or something to that effect. And he said, I knew then that's where I was going. As long as they blocked it, that's where I was going. That's the type of awareness that the Browns need from the players that they draft. Draft those kind of players with that kind of awareness. And then I'm going to throw one more in here for y'all. I said 6, but I'm going to give you a 7th. It's a bonus. This organization needs to create a mold. Then find the right players to fit that mold. That's why the hated Steelers, why to this day I still don't know, are hated. Not because they are rivals or Browns rivals, because the Browns Steelers is no longer a rivalry. But they're hated. You know why? Because they have a mold. They've had 3 head coaches in 73,000 years because they built a mold and they find the players to fit that mold. And the coaches to coach the players who are fitting in that mold. Get it? So, those are the 6/7 steps to the Browns' resurgence. Because at the end of the day, they so far at the rock bottom spot that ain't nowhere else for them to go but up. But time is running out. Excuse me. Okay, last but not least, we're going to give you a little synopsis How we feeling about this AFC, NFC Wild-Card games this weekend? Yes, today is Friday, January 5th, you understand? This AFC, NFC Wild-Card. Let me give you the breakdowns right quick, and then we're going to get up out of here. Oakland Raiders at the Houston Texans. Right quick, I say don't sleep on my man Connor Cook. Yes, he ain't throw but this pass and that pass, but I say don't sleep on this boy Connor Cook. You get it? The Texans got the number 1 rated defense overall, but that Oakland offensive line is tough. I personally am picking the Raiders. I know the analytics and the numbers say the Texans should win because they're at home. All that stuff plays in, but I got this feeling that Connor Cook is going to do well enough to beat the Texans in Houston. And then, of course, we got the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Y'all know how I'm feeling about this. No, I'm not a Steelers fan. But they play football the way football was meant to be played, the way football we would like to see being played in Cleveland, that we wish was being played in Cleveland. Now, you could be mad at them for whatever your reasons, unfounded as they are. But if you're a fan of football first, as you should be, and then team second, if you want to be, man, you can't be mad at nothing these cats do. Brown, Bell, yeah, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Ben. That is a lethal combination. Even though I still have some question about the defense, I say the Pittsburgh Steelers win at home. And the Miami Dolphins will put up a good fight, I say. The Detroit Lions at the Seattle Seahawks. Matt Stafford is more than enough to beat Seattle in Seattle. But without a running game and that 12th man up there, I don't think so. The Seahawks, they lost my man Earl Thomas. They still got Cam Chancellor and they still got Richard Sherman, but Earl Thomas is the catalyst, the backbone of that defense, from the defensive line all the way out. Now, I like my boy Bennett, too, up on that front four, and they get after you. And they didn't win a championship, so they understand how to win. But at the end of the day, I think Detroit going to put up more of a fight, too, than most people give them credit for. And last but not least, the New York Giants at the Green Bay Packers. If anybody can beat the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, it's the New York Giants. Why? Because their history says so, too. For whatever reason, that Giants defense is balling. They seem to always have a defense championship on the cusp, but going under the radar a little bit. And then Eli Manning, he can look terrible all season long and then come out blasting. When it come playoff time, he be ready. And on that note, it's been fun, but we got to run. Appreciate y'all for listening to the Shop Report. Check us out on social media. That's right. Check us out on social media at The Shop Report, or email us, theshopreport365@gmail.com. And if that don't work, Google it. I'm Barbershop Jay. For my man D Gully that was off today, we about to get up out of here, y'all. But remember, the next time y'all want to know what's really going on, man, come to the shop. Walk-ins are always welcome. Holla.